Hey, and welcome back to the Growing Pains podcast. I'm your host, Alyson Gavry, and I'm going to talk to you guys about traditions. I think this is a super interesting one. We talked about getting prepared for the holidays last time. We talked about all of the challenges around spending time away from your business and really connecting with your family. And I wanted to talk about traditions this time because for me, traditions are a little fluid. Like, I don't know if you are listening and you are an earlier parent, like maybe you guys just started your parenthood journey, or if you are deep into all of the differences between business and family and you're trying to figure out what are your traditions, what are the older traditions that maybe you've kept, and what are the ones that you want to move forward with. This topic was actually inspired from another podcast that I super love listening to, specifically geared toward growing a connected family. It's called Family Brand, hosted by Chris and Melissa Smith. And they talked a lot about the ideas around like assessing your traditions. And so I kind of want to break this down a little bit and hopefully just encourage some of the moms listening because my hope is that first and foremost, I want to make sure that you know that your traditions don't define who you are. Like we are always changing, we're always growing. If you guys know this based on the title of the podcast, based on my daily email and my personal brand, like we should be growing and learning new things every single day. And so to me, traditions are great because they, bring back nostalgia and they connect you with your family, potentially in certain times of the year. But traditions should kind of always be on the chopping block, in my opinion. Like if a tradition isn't serving you, it might just mean that it's not for you in this season, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be never. It just might mean that it's just not for right now. I want to break this down a little bit because I actually do believe that traditions and routines are kind of the same thing. It just is the frequency, right? So a routine is a daily tradition and a quote unquote traditional tradition is maybe annual or biannual or whatever, right? So 2 times a year, we go on our annual girls trip. It's been our tradition for 10 years. One time a year, this is actually true for us, we watch It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve. That's a tradition that we have. It's super interesting when you think about it because Steve, my husband, and I were having this conversation as we often do. We like to talk about big things. Actually, I like to talk about big things like right before bed. And he's like, will you please just like shut your brain off for the love of God and let us go to sleep? And so I'm like talking to him. I'm like, hey, I had this thought about traditions. And he's like, oh, here we go. The lights are already off. He's like, what are you trying to tell me right now? Picture this. We have a super routine type of day. We get up at the same time every morning. We do pretty much the same things every morning. We do our workouts and then we do our breakfast. And then oftentimes, if I'm working, I'll jump in and I'll have a couple of meetings in the morning or do some big, picture strategic thinking things. And then if I'm not working, then typically that means we go out for a hike in the mornings now that we've moved here to beautiful Colorado. And so those are our like daily traditions. Like every single morning, the kids know exactly what we're going to be doing. It's helped our productivity. It's helped the kids' adjustment to a new state. So many different benefits rooted in the idea of these daily traditions, right? When we think about being so routined and regimented, which is probably true for a lot of young families, like I said to Steve, I was like, I kind of think that maybe a tradition feeling exciting and fun is the fact that there is no tradition. Like Christmas every year can look different. Like maybe we're spending it at home at our house, or maybe we're going on a vacation, or maybe we're flying back home to the East Coast to be with our extended family. That to me is like way more exciting than like making the same things every year because we do that every day. Like every day. I was talking with one of my cousins just recently had a baby, and she made this joke about Groundhog's Day, like that Bill Murray movie. And we say that all the time. We're like, oh yeah, it's Groundhog's Day. It's just Groundhog's Day and Groundhog's Day. And I think that for a lot of young families, two things are probably true. Number one, they're already so routined that every day feels like a tradition. And so they don't get as excited as maybe like our parents, right? So like the kids' grandparents trying to like hold on to some of these traditions that make them feel like they still have the young family at home and all of those types of things. We as like the parents don't value tradition every single year the same way that our parents value tradition every single year. And it's really, really interesting. So, right? parents feel like they're already in this state of perpetual routine. And then B, it really does feel like we don't want to do the things that maybe our parents did every single year. Or maybe we're trying to figure out like what our traditions even are. I remember I felt it when Frank was a baby and we had our first Christmas. I was like, what's our tradition going to be? Like, what are we going to do every year? And this is going to set the stage for the rest of the Christmases. And like, spoiler alert, it didn't. Frank was an infant. We had no idea what we were doing. And a lot of the things that we did that year, we haven't continued forward with. And he has no idea because he had no memory. And I think removing the stigma of like, all that pressure to do the same thing every year, or once it's done this way, then it's always going to be done that way. I actually think if we invite the idea that instead of being like very traditional every single year, like one time a year, maybe if we are very routine people, which we are, that's how our family operates because we find that it helps us get the most done and keep things kind of moving in a way that feels comfortable for us. It can be true that you don't have a tradition. The tradition is lack of tradition, right? You replan the holidays every single year and you guys can do what feels best for you in that season. Because last year, I mentioned on my last solo, I like hit unsubscribe really hard to Christmas. I was like, you know what? It's been a hectic year. We shipped a lot of big projects. I don't feel like I need to have this season be really hectic for my family. I feel like I really just want it to be relaxing. So we did a thing that was really, really hard for us. My parents have a Christmas Eve party every year, and the whole family comes, and it's like this big thing. And I've always enjoyed contributing food, and I've always enjoyed seeing everybody and just having a really good time. We do like karaoke and stuff. It's like super fun. And we made the really hard decision to be like, actually, we don't feel like that feels like it's for us this year. And you know what? It was hard. Like, I'm not even saying like my parents were not thrilled with that either. And, they understood, of course, and they supported us. But last year, we decided we were like, look, it just feels better for us if we just like do something a little bit less traditional. And we didn't want to be driving late at night on Christmas Eve home to our house because it was important to us that the kids wake up in their beds on Christmas morning. And, that was just what we decided to do. This year looks a little different. Like we're in Colorado. We're not going to be seeing a ton of family like in the actual Christmas season. My mom is going to come for a couple of days with my two brothers, and we're going to do some things around town here in Colorado Springs. But like that might not also be the tradition that they're excited to keep. Like they may feel next year that traveling to us was kind of hectic because they had stuff to prepare for their Christmas Eve party and all these different things. So like I think if we can hold space for everybody to determine what tradition feels right for them this year instead of, being like, oh, well, you've always made the tuna casserole. Like you have to make the tuna casserole again. That person that you're either thrusting that expectation on or whatever that looks like, maybe you're putting it on yourself. Why make the tuna casserole every year? I have to make the tuna casserole this year. Maybe just like give that person or yourself a break, because that's really what the holidays is. It's about being together. It's about taking some time to reflect on where we are and how the year went and what we want to move forward with in 2025, this year and in future years, right? And I think if we are in a position where we just throw ourselves through the same ringer every single year, and maybe we show up reluctantly to quote unquote obligations, like when a tradition starts to feel like an obligation, or you don't get the same joy out of the tradition, maybe it's just time to switch it up. And I think, like, for us, I remember it was like 2 years ago, maybe. I used to love this movie called Four Christmases. It's Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon, and they both come from divorced families and they have to go to these four Christmases after their original plans fall through. I'm sure if you've seen the movie or if you've seen like basically any Vince Vaughn movie, he just like shoots from the hip and it's wild, like super funny. I've always enjoyed it. And then 2 years ago, I remember watching this movie because I watched it every year at Christmas. That was like our Christmas movie that we watched. My mom and I super loved it. And I had friends like growing up who also really loved it. But I just remembered watching it like 2 years ago and I was like, I don't know if I align with this. It wasn't bringing me joy. I wasn't laughing nearly as much. And so last year I told Steve because, he was like, hey, like, when are we going to watch Four Christmases? And I was like, I don't think I want to watch it this year. I just don't think it's for me. And he didn't really enjoy it either. He just like did it because he knew that I really liked it. And so I think 2 years ago too, when I was watching it and I was like, huh, I don't know if this is for me. I like looked over and he was asleep. And I was like, well, this isn't what this was supposed to do. It's supposed to connect you. It's supposed to, pull you together. And then I looked over and I was like, oh, well, he's asleep. And now we've lost an evening of watching a movie that I'm not even really enjoying. And he now isn't watching and we don't get to spend this time together. So I encourage you as you're kind of figuring out this season, like what your traditions are for future years as you like step more confidently into 2025. Ask yourself, what traditions do you really want to keep? And which are you totally cool with scrapping? Because I think every single year we end up like falling back into this thing where we maybe are doing things that we don't want to do, that don't feel like they align with us, that don't support our family and our family being together, really, really truthfully and meaningfully together. Maybe for you guys, like it could be the type of gift giving that happens, the types of meals that are shared, going to somebody's home, movies that you're watching, activities that you're doing. We did the zoo here in Colorado Springs last year because we happened to be in town, around the season. Now we live here and we were doing an assessment of our traditions and we were like, yeah, we super want to take the kids back to the zoo. That was a really fun time. And you know what? That could be true for the next 2, 3 years. And then one time it might not be true. One time we might feel like the zoo is a burden and like going to the zoo is going to stop us from doing other things that we want to do. And we can put it down for a season and then we can pick it back up another year. When we start to think about traditions, just definitely be in the reassessment every year. And I think just being honest and open with the people who might be disappointed about your, decision to put down the tradition, just tell them like, hey, it might not be forever, but this is something that is standing in the way. At least it feels, or is causing us stress, of just being together for the holidays. And I think, even thinking through like alternate types of options for them. Like my parents, for example, when we moved to Colorado Springs, they're like, well, you guys are going to come back for the holidays. And we were like, no, we just got here. Like, we're just going to enjoy this time together and not travel and give ourselves the gift of simplicity in the season. And I was like, but you guys are welcome to come and stay and hang out with us and do Christmas stuff. And so my mom said, yeah, I'll come, and asked my brothers. And 2 out of 4 were like, yeah, let's do this. And so it could also look like something that not everybody does. Like, I think it's really interesting to see, like, for my dad, for example, like he wants to be with the kids, but they own a bar in my hometown. And it's really hectic for him because of all of the things that they do around the holidays at the bar to encourage people to come and to listen to their live music and take advantage of their specials and all the things. Like he was like, this actually feels like more for me to come out now versus just coming out in February or coming out, later in January. And so I said, that sounds great to me. So I think giving your people too, if somebody comes to you and, is wanting to shift a decision, on their traditions, be open and be excited for them and support them in what they need in the season. I think there's so many shoulds around Christmas time, right? Like we should do a train ride and we should go to the zoo and we should do all of the crafts and we should take the kids to see Santa and we should decorate cookies and make ornaments and whatever else. It feels a little bit like keeping up with the Joneses. So I encourage you, reassess your traditions. Really traditions to me and the specialness and the excitement of the season, in my opinion, so you guys can take this for what it's worth, is having a new experience during this time. Because we have our routines that we set up throughout the year. And if they're great routines and they're kept, then we've probably changed a little bit as a human being. And so what we might have liked last year might not be what we like this year. What we were excited for this year might not be what we're excited for, next year. And I think like last year for me, it was all about R&R. I was like, oh, we had a heavy year. My book launched last year. I was like ready to just be with my family and like not do any of the traditional Christmas stuff. This year, I'm like, oh, we're in a new place. We have neighbors to meet. I don't know if you guys are following me on social media, which you totally should be, at Allie Caffrey on Instagram. We made like 12 dozen cookies for like all of our neighbors and friends. And tomorrow we're going to like go around town and like deliver those cookies to people. And it's super fun and exciting for us. And the kids are loving it. And there's maybe a year in the future where like we decide to go to Maui for Christmas and that doesn't happen. And it's totally fine because a year's worth of changing tradition or whatever isn't going to mean that, you're not going to do it again next year. So super excited about 2025 and all of our opportunities to improve like our daily routines and just kind of really reassess, who we are, what we need in this season. If you are listening to the show, you're loving the show, I really would be honored if you would leave a review for us. I love hearing from folks that the podcast is making a difference for them. And I also love hearing any requests or suggestions that you guys have for future episodes, either solos from me or guests that you really want to see come on the show. Send me an email. Super easy to reach. Honestly, I respond to all my emails, maybe mildly addicted to email. Or you can send me a DM on Instagram at Ali Caffrey. Also respond to all my DMs. Let me know what you guys are loving. I would love to hear from you. And I hope you guys just have the most incredibly relaxing holiday season and fresh start to the new year. The new year is just a date on the calendar. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be different. You're still going to be faced with the same circumstances and challenges and all the things that were true in 2024. And I think the really beautiful opportunity is that there's this, kind of nice line in the sand that you can choose along with others and hold each other accountable to, really start to actualize a lot of your dreams this year. Whether that means for you establishing more boundaries and saying no to more things so that you can be with your family, whether that means, really blocking in time for things that you should be doing that you maybe aren't to grow your business, to connect your family, or to, really grow your personal or emotional health. I think all is on the table. Something that I am using that I don't have alongside me right now, but I want to. Intelligent Change, the creators of the 5 Minute Journal, do a best year journal, which I am loving right now. I've been going through all of their prompts and activities and plan to use that journal for 2025. So if you're loving that, you can go ahead and grab a copy. I'll add it into the show notes. And if you are excited about 2025, holler, let me know. Let me know what you're excited about, how we can support you on the show. Like I said, any guests you want to see, any topics you want to see covered. I'm so excited and love, love, love this podcast. So have a happy new year, and I will see you guys in 2025.